As you start up a conversation with a replicator prospect, we'll provide some qualifying questions that are tied to the 3 most common business scenarios and 4 general topics that are designed to focus on the prospect's unique situation. The topics are performance, which is tied to the technology in their environment; the user experience, speaks for itself; productivity, which is actually for both types of users, the end users and the SharePoint administrators using the tool; and finally, reporting, which is great messaging for IT managers and IT directors who are directly involved in the replicator sale. You can also see that the information is organized by questions to ask, pain points to find, solutions to offer, and benefits to show. We won't go through every line here, but you'll have these sheets as a takeaway. Or feel free to pause the screen and read. Let's discuss geographically distributed farms. This is exciting because these are some of the largest SharePoint users in the world. They have the most complex environments, and they're the most likely to need all of our services. Users expect a level of responsiveness from their collaboration environment equivalent to commercially available products. Whether in a large organization with several globally distributed headquarters or a collective of consultants who work across multiple US states or European countries, without having a SharePoint server nearby, and especially if you're in a location that has connectivity issues, the level of responsiveness that these users expect is hard to meet. However, by replicating the environments that are close to the end user, Replicator meets these expectations while simultaneously providing advanced features to ensure the collaboration can be seamless across the disparate locations. Here I'll go through a few questions, but don't worry, not all. First, let's find out how large the environment is. Ask if they have farms located around the country. If yes, the common pain points are slow response times, user complaints, and possibly how the users in the remote locations are finding different collaborative alternatives. So we can offer the ability to synchronize not only all content, but selected content within the environment. For users, we can further dive into the importance of the collaboration content itself. Is the content important to day-to-day operations, we can ask. If yes, and you're talking to an IT director or a SharePoint administrator, their pain point is the amount of time and money that's been spent on SharePoint environment, and that the users don't understand the effort that it takes to get it up. Again, they want the commercial product, and it's not easy to provide. This is a key area where we can allow IT directors, SharePoint administrators, the ability to bring farms and content directly to the end user instead of that single huge farm that they've been managing. A note here too, it could be any version of SharePoint, even the basic quote-unquote free foundation. Taking a different angle with performance, in these large organizations who are going through mergers and acquisitions, or may just have very large divisions with their own SharePoint farms, we can ask if they have different versions of SharePoint across the organization. If so, then we can focus on the pain of transferring information across these environments and planning for the future migration and integration across the business silos. Pretty simply, we can do that. Finally, let's talk a little bit about compliance. In this scenario, you can ask, do you need to verify that certain SharePoint content doesn't leave the country? This might sound strange in a digital world, but with new regulations, countries are requiring that the source information must always be housed in the originating country. So with synchronization, this regulation can be met and the risk mitigated. An example, in the European Union, they're saying that an organization that is found passing personally identifiable information might be charged up to 5% of their total income. Imagine if that happens to Google. Let's talk about continuity of operation disaster recovery. We live in a digital age, and no longer is it acceptable to not be connected to your business critical or even draft content. Organizations spend a lot of time planning, organizing, and building infrastructure to ensure that content is available during planned and unplanned outages. A typical scenario is to build 2 identical SharePoint farms and copy content from production over to the disaster recovery. There may be many ways to do this, but none is as fast as content replication. You can move all or a select subset of content to always be available in your secondary environment. This is called a warm situation. The secondary environment is always available and the content is up to date. Here I'll go through a few key questions, but not all. When trying to start a conversation about continuity of operations, you can ask, is SharePoint constantly blamed for service interruptions? It doesn't matter if the interruption is caused by the browser, network, or SQL, it's always SharePoint's fault. So here the issue is too much complaining, too much attention being brought to your service not doing what it was designed for. And now, no matter if it's a planned or unplanned option, content synchronization can mitigate some of those complaints because the content is always available. When talking about continuity, you can ask about the requirements of their farm. How long is too long to move from one farm to the next? If this time is too long, users could encounter loss of data and may have to perform rework. If the content is up to date and the secondary location is ready, then there's nothing to worry about. Definitely no loss of information. An interesting thing about continuity is that you don't realize the dependencies until one part of the application is not available. What happens if key documents in a process are stored in SharePoint and not available? Finally, let's ask if continuity is a strategic objective. Finally, let's ask if continuity is a strategic objective. And if so, what are the requirements around testing for their organization and possibly for external regulations? A lot of companies set up disaster recovery environments but are very hesitant to test. With content replication, it's easy to ensure that content is always available. Here's a little bit of a niche scenario, but one that I'm confident can go far. In my days as a SharePoint consultant, we were working on a lot of external communications for sharing content, business information, and even applications between organizations, customers, partners, and/or vendors. Here are many ways to set up an extranet, and being able to selectively choose content allows our prospects the ability to choose from a wide variety of authentication, security, and infrastructure options. Here we'll go through a few of the questions, but not all. While a prospect might not specifically state, hey, I need an extranet, you can ask a simple question. Do you need to provide content to users outside your corporate network, partners, customers? Almost always the answer is yes. And the process is most likely convoluted or based completely through email, which can cause problems itself. The message here is to simplify usage and increase the confidence in the security and validity of the content. The biggest thing we can do for productivity is to bring the user close to the content and also make sure there is a direct path of tracking the content from source to destination. It's very common that delays in communication can hinder projects with partners and customers, and we know that that costs money. So here we can reduce the risks and expedite the planning by having a single point of truth for content. No copying and pasting, collaboration is performed automatically by the system. For performance, again, you're most likely not working with partners who work across the street, and hopefully your prospects have a diverse set of customers, maybe even across the world. So here we ask where their partners and customers are and highlight the pain of outages of critical communication communications or applications that they share with those groups. By having content replication, they don't need to worry about those issues. With Replicator, the key qualifying questions find the pain point of the SharePoint administrator and/or IT director and highlight the value that synchronization of content can bring to an organization of any size.